Okay, welcome to Listen Up Podcast, and today I'm here with Megan Stover, and we're going to talk about uh, the effects of sexual abuse and how it affects a person, their relationships, and how they experience trauma over the years. So, her and I both have experienced it. Um, Never really thought anything about it until we started looking into it. So, when it originally started with you, I think you were in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And can you talk about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, it recently came up in my therapy sessions.
Okay.
And before that, I didn't remember about it. So what had happened was I started therapy last year for an incident that I had been through. And as I was in my therapy sessions, it was like this particular trauma, the sexual abuse trauma, was revealed to me through a body memory. And so, that was my experience with sexual abuse. Was what I think I'm not exactly sure how old I was, but somewhere around 10 or 11.
Yes.
And it was at the church that I attended, and it was with a janitor there.
Why does it always happen in churches?
I don't know.
I'm not saying it always does, but it
doesn't.
happens a lot.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. And that's sad.
Yes.
And so there was a janitor at this particular church. And I remember my brother and sister and I spent a lot of time hanging out with this janitor. And
was he actually a member of the church?
He was, yes, and employed by the church.
Okay.
And he lived on the church property.
Oh, my.
And so I just remember spending time in this. He had like a little studio suite, like apartment type thing that they had set up for him there. And we would go in there and like play video games and stuff like that. And I do also want to say that like some of the stuff that we shared today is going to be or it could be graphic, it could be triggering for some people. So
if it's something that triggers you, you should probably seek some professional help for it.
Yeah. So I specifically remember one Sunday in Sunday school having blood on the back of my dress. And that particular memory has always stood out to me. And I was associating it with like just possibly starting my menstrual cycle.
Right.
But after it was revealed in therapy for me that I had experienced sexual abuse, I'm actually thinking that it was that day, and that my brain, in order to protect me, had repressed that memory of the sexual abuse, because I only specifically remember the like blood on the back of my dress. And however, in the memory that I had from my therapy session, it was very graphic. Have you heard of a body memory?
Yes.
Okay. So, like your brain doesn't just make up a body memory. And like I could feel things, like I could feel the penetration in the body memory. And so, it's a little bit hard to grasp and like wrap your mind around that.
Right.
When for so many years you had repressed that memory to protect yourself.
Right.
For me, it was coming up in different negative stories and limiting beliefs that I was experiencing, which was why my therapist and I continued to dive deeper into past traumas that I've experienced. And so I only remember like that one incident I don't
Yeah.
remember it happening more than one time. Like more times haven't come up in therapy or anything like that. It's just
Gotcha.
that one incident. And so then when I was 13 is when we moved here to this area. So I don't know like how long that janitor was employed at that church or anything like that. But that was my experience with sexual abuse. Um, so yeah, I don't know how far deeper you want me to go, like
No,
into my
that's
therapy
fine.
session or
So,
anything like that. But
right.
yeah,
Um, you never don't know whatever happened to the person?
I don't.
Okay. Yeah. When you left
I
that
don't.
church, you kind of left all contact, huh?
We did.
I
We
wonder
did.
if he had a history of that type of thing, you know? I would imagine so, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I think unless people like that get serious help, then yes, they're repeat.
Right.
I yeah.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What
So,
about for you?
oh me. Um, I knew it happened. Never really paid any attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it has to do with where I came from, my background, and then the simple fact that you're a male. So, and it was actually a female. Okay, so you're a male, and you're supposed to, um, in my community during that time period, uh, you were a punk if you you showed any type of sensitivity towards it.
Mhm.
But so I never really thought about it. The one thing that, well, this is how it happened. This was before, I guess I was like 11 or 12 years of age. And it was a neighbor. And um, it was, we thought close family, it's always somebody close to you.
Right.
Right. So you thought it was a close family friend. And uh, invited me over. And I guess they were trying to get me aroused, so they were showing me
Mm.
pornography,
Mm.
right? So I believe that they probably had experienced, um,
Experienced it themselves.
yes, from a family member, because the pornography that they were showing me, they were. If I was 11, they were maybe 15 or 16 years of age. So they were showing me an older person's pornography catalog. So I was assuming that was just to get me aroused, right? And then um, I got pushed down and taken advantage of. And, as much as I'd like to say that, I was a man at 11, 12 years old, I
Right.
I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So once it took place, um, I think what bothered me the most is I went home and I told a family member, and I think the thing that bothered me most is the family member laughed, right?
Mm.
So, so over the years, that's kind of all I remember about it.
Yeah.
But I was talking with someone a year or so ago, and they were like, "You should probably get some therapy on that, and probably delve a little deeper to see what happened, like you,
Right.
in that situation."
Was yours just the one incident
Yes.
or repeated?
No, it's just once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which doesn't diminish it at all. I was just curious.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess you never really think about women as being predators.
You don't think of it as often as you do
Yeah, men.
vice versa. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I think with the women, I think more so they don't stand up for the people that need to be, they don't speak up. So I think a lot of times the women are more so complicit in what's happening.
well, I think society's been set up so if a woman does speak up about it, um, she's considered complicit in the whole. The first thing is, well, she shouldn't have worn those type of clothes, or
I see what you're saying. I'm saying more so if a female knows that a male is abusing someone else, a child, for instance. I think that like is more so, or I wonder if it's more so of what has wound up being like a female's role. You understand what I'm like asking, or like just kind of thinking through?
not really.
It's not that big of a deal then.
Okay. So say it again.
Okay. Are more women just like complicit when they know it's happening to somebody else? Like they don't speak up, they just kind of go along with it because maybe they want to keep the family together, or
Gotcha.
they don't want to upset anyone in the family, or maybe if they said something, nothing would change, or maybe they don't see anything wrong with it. Maybe they're just as perverted. I don't know. I've just been thinking about that. And honestly, I have the Menendez brothers story in my mind because I'm watching their show right now.
Right.
And that, they dealt a lot with that. Their mother knew. And so I think that that's why my mind went where it went, because the mom knew and she didn't want to, well, allegedly or whatever, the mother knew and didn't want to disrupt the family.
Yeah. So that buys into that whole control thing that we were.
Yeah.
We I don't know if we talked about before we started rolling, but that buys into that whole control thing, which kind of leads into everything that we've talked about up to this moment. When you're in that situation, when your practices, your life practices, tells you that this person should be the head of the house, and you should submit. If in any kind of way that you have your own for any type of reason, you're being duplicitous or you're being disingenuous. So you're constantly being vulnerable.
Yeah.
So if you're in that situation, I feel like sometimes you probably would feel like you would have to accept whatever the outcome is, right? Which is bad in itself because I think one of the things we both know and we've both been taught through Christianity is that people are inherently evil, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how good a person is. When you get to a certain amount or number of them, some of them are going to go off the rail. You just don't know which ones it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can see where that would take place.
Yeah.
So if you're in a home where there's no way out, what else can you do, right?
Well, for one, I think, are you talking about from like the female standpoint or
Yeah.
from the victim?
From the female standpoint,
Yeah.
Which the victim, you feel powerless as well, right?
Exactly. And I think that's what I was thinking as well. And even more so at I think depending on your age, you might be able to, or I'm wondering if depending on your age, you might feel like, because of like your maturity level, maybe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That you can say something to somebody. Because I'm thinking of like a young child.
They're innocent, so they don't know
Right.
what's right or wrong. So if they're telling you because they think that it's something that you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But when it gets suppressed, and nothing's taking place, then that's when it goes off the rail, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. So moving forward, how do you think you never thought it affected anything in your life? Or does it, now that you learned about it, do you see things that happened or taking place because of it in your relationships or anything?
That's great. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think for me, because I had grown up in the church and I had been like, it was deeply ingrained in me how to behave.
Right.
So there was no, you just did it this way. There's no, you know, experience outside of that. And what I mean by that is because the way of living was so ingrained in me, it wasn't until after I went through my separation and divorce when I started experiencing life like outside of such a rigid set of rules and guidelines that these situations were coming up for me and opportunities for like these negative stories. And what I mean by that is, for instance, um, they talk these days in dating and within relationships and stuff like that about knowing your worth.
Right.
And when you know your worth, you don't stay in situations that are unhealthy or toxic. And so for me, I think that for the 20 years that I was married, I wasn't necessarily, that didn't necessarily affect me because I just knew that I was supposed to live life by the rules.
Right.
But as I began dating and was dealing with all of that newness is when like I didn't know my worth. And so yes, it caused me to stay in situations that were toxic. And when that happened is when I found myself in like more abuse.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and that was physical, not sexual. So, but you know what's interesting? Like since we're talking about sexual abuse, there are times within my marriage that I didn't, and there could be many people like this these days. I'm really not sure. Maybe this resonates with somebody or not, but there are many times that like I didn't want to have sex or I was just pressured into it by my ex-husband because like as a Christian and to be like the biblical wife.
Your wifely duties.
Correct.
Right.
And yeah. So I do think that it has played out in other ways.
So it wasn't always enjoyable.
No. And there, when you're married for 20 years, I mean, even when you're in a relationship with somebody for 1 year, you have situations that you're working through. But when you're with somebody for 20 years, you have some high highs and there's possible for some low lows and times when, the marriage isn't as like exciting and then you have rough patches and things like that. And I would say that in some of our rough patches during those times when like I did not want to like have sex, it caused me to resent. It caused me to resent my ex-husband. And in my therapy sessions, there have been some memories that I've had to reprocess because I do EMDR and we've talked about that some. And it's where you go in and for anybody that's like just listening maybe to this one episode or whatever, but EMDR is where you go in and you think about the particular memory that has a negative cognition associated with it. One could be, I'm not good enough. And so your I'm not good enough can be tied to a negative memory. And for me, some of those were the times when my ex-husband and I were being intimate I wasn't wanting to. And so in the sessions, you release whatever emotions you have come up. And that's how you move forward through EMDR therapy.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, it's called reprocessing your memories. And so then after that, the goal, and for me, it's been very successful. Like, you don't have any more negative emotions associated with that memory. But yeah, it definitely has showed up in other areas of my life.
Yeah.
How about for you?
I don't know. I probably need to talk to someone
Yeah,
about
that's
it
what, yeah.
because I am not sure. The first thing I'll definitely say is I love women.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I actually think women are the most amazing just creatures that God's ever created. I just don't think once you get a beautiful, ambitious, smart woman um, that's full of life, I think everything else can flow through that particular person. So and I love being around women like that. So um, it's not affected that.
Yeah.
Um, um, I'm fairly confident.
So then so then let me ask you this.
What?
What makes you think that if you don't have any kind of negative thought process or pattern that you're noticing, what makes you think that you need or
Well, when
possibly
someone
could
said
use?
it,
Right.
but so I don't know,
Yeah.
right? But there's things about me. I'm very uh, once I'm very task focused.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it has anything to do with it, but when I get my eyes set on a goal,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just get out the way. Or if you don't get out the way, I'm just going to keep going no matter what. And sometimes I'm a little less sensitive. So I don't know if any of this has anything to do with anything.
Right.
But it may not. But the fact that the family member laughed at me might have more of an effect than anything.
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
Because when you mentioned it and you tried to go to somebody that you thought you could talk to,
Right.
they blew you off with a laugh.
Yeah.
Did you feel shame then? Do you remember if you felt like shame, or do you remember if you felt
11
anything?
years old.
Right.
I didn't know what I was to feel. That's
Right.
why I went to someone that's was supposed to have been my protector.
Do you remember what you did after you talked to her? Like when you left that conversation, like do you remember if you went to your room or did you cry?
I'm pretty sure. I don't think I cried.
No.
No, but I'm pretty sure I probably went to my room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know. I probably started thinking about sexual activity a lot younger though.
Yeah.
Than you probably should have.
And you know what's interesting about that? I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing that I've been learning more about, and like I even experienced this myself, is there can be some times when you're being abused sexually that you are aroused or you enjoy it. And that actually can, because let's take the instance for me. In my therapy session, as I was reprocessing the memory, I remember getting like aroused and actually liking it. And I mentioned that to my therapist in the middle of the reprocessing, because as you're reprocessing the memory, she'll like pause you for a minute, bring you out and say like, what's coming up? And so then you'll share, and then
I'm coming up. Sorry, Karen.
Well, for me, and I'm just going to say this, for me, it was as I was sitting there, I remember telling her, like, my vagina is tingling. And, like, that had not happened to me before in one of my therapy sessions. So I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
And so as we continued talking, there was a part for me that, like, actually enjoyed it. And so that, I think, is what I'm trying to say, is that, and then there can be a level of shame around that, because there can be times where you may get aroused, and part of it you do enjoy. And it could be the part of your brain that doesn't realize that this is not right, or that somebody should not be doing this to you.
Right. Right.
And so I think that that's I'm saying all that to say that if anybody has experienced that, don't let the shame of that, like, continue playing another negative story in your brain. And, you know, everybody has different ways that they heal and process their past.
Right.
And so.
Yeah. Now that we mention it, I was probably a little too pursuant at a younger age. It was never a control thing for me. Like, I think, some activities or the way you do things, like, I think rape is that's a control issue. I don't have any issues with anything like that, but I'm probably a lot younger were pursuing. So I'm assuming that maybe I learned that behavior from that incident, and then I was trying to portray or
well, maybe you were just experiencing life.
Maybe it was normal.
Maybe it was normal. I mean, that particular experience, like, possibly did wake something up in you.
Yeah. So.
And then you explored.
Yeah. Interesting. Well.
Yeah. Do you have any shame or maybe regret around that?
No.
Oh, good.
No. And that's probably pretty strange, huh? Because I don't have any.
No, I don't think so. This is judgment-free zone.
Okay.
No.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been interesting.
It has.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that, like, I think to kind of, like, think about both of our situations. Yours, you remembered. Mine, I did not until a certain point in time. And so I think for your listeners, like, it's important to know that sometimes there are things that happen to us in life that do affect us that maybe we don't remember. And whether you remember it or not, like, if it's showing up in areas, getting help is important. And then, like, if you do remember it and it's affecting you, like, definitely reach out and get help.
Right, because you don't know which direction it's going to go in, right?
Right.
You don't know how much willpower control you have.
Right. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, any last thoughts?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think this is one of our shorter ones, but I think this one is.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Chock full of information here.
Yep. I would say, I was going to say something like, if one person doesn't listen to you, go to somebody else. But then at the same time, your listeners are probably not 11. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah. So, yeah. If any of you guys out there experiencing it, one person don't listen to you, go to
somebody else. Right. That brings up another thing. So I did go to my mom and tell her about my experience.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't do that, but my mom would have shot the whole block up.
We're talking about, like, in the last year. And she
No, she wouldn't. She's a nice lady. Go ahead.
We're talking about, like, in the last year, and, like, she has a hard time believing me. And she's like, if your dad knew, he would have done this. He would have shot him. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, I can't make this up. I'm not. It is what it is.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So that to say that, yeah,
So
not
and
everybody.
you told your mom,
Hmm.
and she said
She didn't know. She's saying she doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, my dad is not in a place where, like,
But she said your dad would have definitely done something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that because
Yeah.
that's dads are like that.
Yeah.
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 Dads and daughters. Mm.
Yeah.
All right. There's a guy in the news now that I think he shot someone and he was in the car. His 14-year-old daughter. He was like 65-year-old man that had the history of this stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, you understand why?
Yeah.
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 Because once this happens, this is not something that you go, okay, we can just move on. The whole situation is done. It's over with. We can forget it. No, this is lasting effects,
Right.
right? And it's just trauma, and it stays there.
Right. And I hope that by you sharing today
Yeah.
and being from a man's perspective, I just hope that, gives other men for them to know that they're not alone if it happened to them.
Yeah.
And yeah, I do think that it is becoming more normal, maybe.
To talk about.
Yes.
It's more normal to talk about.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it's happened all the time.
Yeah.
Right. But I would imagine the one that probably, if you were taken advantage of by another man, a male, another older male, that would create a lot of issues, I would imagine. So,
Mm.
and it's in the manosphere, it's a lot of emphasis is put on power and control, and sex is one of the ways that you establish dominance and power and control, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Unfortunately, but that's where we are. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, okay, that concludes today's episode of Listen Up. Thank you. Remember, share, like, follow, and definitely subscribe. All right. We'll see you next time on Listen Up. Thanks. For anyone watching this channel, I ask that you please like and subscribe for upcoming videos.